What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Studio Steve. This is episode 6. We're taking a break from talking about basketball today. We're getting into some other stuff, some more important stuff. We got friends, we got family, we got people that are running businesses, people that are trying to pursue dreams. So we want to try and facilitate conversations with those people. One of those people today happens to be one of a good friend of mine who I've known for over a decade, Karun Sahota, who is the CEO, founder of Peril Vision. The colors you see in the background, the colors you see on the running ticker below is an homage to the Los Angeles Lakers for winning the NBA title, for LeBron James for bringing the title back to LA and giving a title to all the washed up players that were on the bench on his team. Now, again, I want to get into today's episode. As I say, very exciting to always have friends on and people who are trying to actively pursue whatever it might be, whether it's music, whether it's art in any fashion form, music, food. And in this case, my guest today has sort of his fingers in many pies. And it started off with him as a very innocent thing. What had happened was, as an early age, Karun started off as an illustrator, as a designer, and that slowly moved into different areas in terms of him getting into fashion, in fact. So his passion and his love for illustrating and designing led him to get into fashion. In 2009, between 2009 and 2010, he started up a clothing company called Crux Clothing, which at that time is when I first met Karun. And it happened to be through music that we linked. There was a mutual friend that introduced both of us. At that time, I was actually opening up for Swollen Members at a show, and Karun just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And so we linked up, and he was the official merch guy for our show. And that was kind of his introduction to me and my introduction to him. And what a great place to start. Not too long after that, he joined the collective, which is known as Desi Method, which is essentially a music label, but it's much more, and it's grown to be so much more than that in the 10 years that it's existed. And then that sort of parlayed Karun to get into music himself. And now he's an artist himself. And he actually was one of the people instrumental with me getting my first mixtape out. He actually did the album cover work. He did a few of the single album covers as well, artwork, I should say, for some of the singles on that album. And then helped me record a bunch of the singles as well. Some of them in his basement, some of them in his garage, in his bedroom, wherever, because we were just trying to get music out and we were just trying to do our thing. But it's come a long way, and he's now an artist himself. He's always been an illustrator and a physical artist, but now he's an artist in terms of his music pursuits. And he goes by your boy, KRN. So this all leads up to why we're here today, and that's to talk about Peril Vision, which is his now new company since Crux Clothing. So we're going to talk about the initial beginnings. We're going to talk about where Peril is now and where it's going to go in the future. Without further ado, I'd like to add my good friend, Karun Sahota, your boy, KRN. Welcome to the show.
What's up, buddy? How's it going?
Great, man. It's great. I was saying earlier that, it's always such a pleasure to have on friends and people who are pursuing and trying to better themselves and, and trying to grow businesses and establish businesses and everything. And I can see you got the Peril hat on. Repping the merch, man.
Yeah, got to be, right?
I love it. So, every story starts with a beginning, and I kind of want to go back to the beginning in terms of when you started illustrating and designing. Was this something you always did, like as a kid?
Bro, honestly, like I've always been into illustration. It was just something like it's one of those things like you could easily do for free with your friends. You know what I mean? You'd be looking at comic books and whatnot, and you try to recreate what you saw on those pages, or you know what we used to do at first was like Mortal Kombat books or like Street books. We'd take the booklet and we tried to redraw everything on it. You know what I mean? But I like just being around like man, in the 90s, everything was like cartoons, everything was merchandise. It just being around it so much, you get influenced by it, right?
So would you say that was actually my next question? Was it what were your influences? And it sounds like comic books, video games are sort of your influences start illustrating and designing.
For sure, bro. And just access too, bro. Like I remember my uncle, my mom's brother. So they in our culture, we'd call him my mama,
Yeah.
right? So my mama pretty much he actually gave me this like back in the day this like downloaded version of Adobe Photoshop like 2 or 3 or some shit like that, right? Oh sorry, you don't mind if I like swear or anything on the podcast, right?
Dude, we're on the internet, homie. You can do whatever you want.
No, but so my mama pretty much this guy he introduced me to Photoshop early on, and I used to sit around. I mean, I'm like 5, 6 years old messing around on Photoshop, and I'm like,
Wow.
this is so interesting, right? And I used to just sit there and watch my mama do some random stuff, and he would like he would take like excerpts from like a Gurbani page or something like that, and he'd like put like he'd copy and paste like a picture of Guru Nanak Dev Ji on it with some of the lines from it, and he'd print it out and put it on the wall and stuff like that, right? I'm like, this is interesting. We could do some stuff with this, right? But other thing I was lucky to have in my life was like I had creative adults around me, man. Like
Mm.
my dad was super into like creative art stuff, and my chacha, and he was like a singer. He did Punjabi, Punjabi Gane and stuff like that. If anybody's heard of Nashe Pata, he released that back in the day.
Nice.
So these guys stayed doing creative shit, and we pick up on it, right? Kids are always watching, bro. Like you probably know that from your children. They're always watching, right?
Always watching, man. And that's interesting that at such a young age you were touched by art, and that not only you were touched by it, but that you were interested enough in it to start partaking in it.
Hmm.
Because like I was interested in music from the get-go, and I didn't get into actually creating music for decades later in my life. Like it was, it was one of those things that always in the back of my mind was like, that's something you only do when you're on TV. And I was like, I don't know how the hell to get on TV, so I'm not even going to try to get with it.
Yeah,
But
but
this is, go ahead.
oh, sorry, sorry to cut you off there. But like, did you find yourself like maybe spitting some rhymes with your friends back in the day, like when you're in elementary school or?
This is I would say I never did. I would always I had a really good knack for remembering rhymes. So
Mhm.
if I listened to an album or if I listened to a song within a week, you know what I mean? Like I could remember everything. And I was really interested in like oration in general. Like we used to go to church a lot when I was a kid, and I used to love the sort of just like this presence that the pastor, the priest would have just being up front. You know what I mean? Like, and he's got the lapel mic on, and he's speaking, it's going through the speakers, everyone's paying attention to him. So for me, that was kind of like a performance, right? And I was like, damn, like I don't want to be a pastor, but I love this kind of performance thing, right? I would love to do that. And again, remembering rhymes and remembering lyrics, I was so into the cadence and the
Mhm.
techniques and the technical aspect of writing that, I was always picking up on, East Coast music and is so diverse, but in certain regions it sounds like this, and in certain regions it sounds like this, and on the West it sounds like this, and in the Midwest
Yeah.
it sounds like this, right? So I was really interested in that, but I never would have thought to like bust a rhyme in front of friends because that stuff was always a little embarrassing, and we'll touch on this a little later when we talk about music because you and I both know, you know, growing up in Surrey around brown dudes, you try to be like artsy and it just doesn't fly,
I
you
know,
know.
bro. They be coming for us, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, 100%.
But no,
Um,
no, that's. I'm glad you told me that, man. Like, I would say, bro, like people sometimes like rapping and stuff like that, bro. Sorry, I know we're gonna talk about it later. You know
no, it's
what?
all
Let's
good.
just let's leave that thought because we're gonna talk about it a little bit later. Let's go with your train of thought here.
All right, so I'm trying to connect the dots and go from one piece of the storyline to the next. So, it begins with you at an early age. You're into illustrating. You're into drawing. This is influences that are surrounding you from your dad, your uncles, everyone that's in your family. So this is close people to you, right? It's not like just something you saw on TV. Like this is people that you're aspiring to. You're kind of like your role models around you. When did that turn into I want to start a clothing line in Crux Clothing?
Yeah, I mean, even clothing line, like you could run this by my sisters or anybody. Like I was so young when I started like thinking about it. Like I used to see like Tupac with Thug Life clothing, and then slowly I saw like Beanie Siegel and all these guys come, Memphis Bleak and all these guys come out with State Property clothing and Snoop Dogg. I'm like, yo, this is so cool. Like all these guys owning their own clothing companies, and the big guys like Rockefeller Jeans, like Rockaware
Yeah, yeah.
and like all this stuff. I was like, this is so cool, man. So I'd be like, I'd be there when I was a young kid, just drawing. Like, okay, if I had if I had access to a clothing company or whatever, I would, make this, whatever. I'd make this, I'd make that, and I used to bro. I used to literally ask my grandparents every time they went to India or whatever, right? I'd be like, yo, when you guys go to India, like you guys gotta find me a manufacturer so I can get I'm like 12 years old, bro, at this time. And I'm like, you gotta find me a manufacturer so I could get this clothing line done, right? And I was always serious about this. This is something that I always wanted to do, right? So when I came about like this opportunity, like I'm getting older, I'm like, dude, I'm actually like, this is something I can do. And at that time, I had seen some shit popping off on the East Coast. Like I remember my dad sent me this song. It was by Waffles and Beats. I don't know if you've ever heard of these guys,
No.
Waffles and Beats. Actually, I think it's a collective with like Noise Music, B Magic, and they're one of this guys that was producing for them. I
Okay.
can't I can't remember his name, but anyways, these East Coast guys, and my dad sent me this clip, this video back in like 2010, 2009 or something. And it was these brown guys in a basement, like literally with a mattress up on the wall, recording a song, and it was just bumping, right? I'm like, holy shit, I'm like, dudes that look like us is doing this right now. Like, they're putting themselves out there. I'm like, shit, we're capable of doing that, right? So at that time, I reached out to the homie, right? And I knew like he had, he was the type of guy that was he had like leadership qualities, right?
Mm.
So I had reached out to him about this idea. I'm like, yo, I do this art, like I have this vision. Is this something you want to be a part of? So we set out on this journey and we started learning all these new things. We met all these people, people that we're meeting are teaching us things, right? Like we met this printer, Iqbal. If you're listening, Iqbal, shout out to you, brother. But like Iqbal taught us so much stuff from the game, like how to do certain things with vectorizing images and how to get, so and so printed, or what is the best design to print, or like material to print, or fabric or paints and all this stuff, right? So we met so many people, including yourself, that, out of it, this whole experience was born, Crux Clothing. But that sadly, we had to close that company down. I don't know if I ever told you why,
No, please tell me.
bro. Like we literally, it got to a point. I think that company that used to make like rubber shoes, Crocs.
Crocs. Oh, I remember this story. I
Yeah,
remember you telling me this.
yeah. So basically Crocs, like I mean, high powered company, they probably have a bunch of like lawyers sitting there, so they're looking for trademarks that are similar, right? And we were
Yeah.
trying to trademark Crocs clothing, and it's related with apparel, so they're like, oh, this is too close, like the name is way too close to what we have, and we do apparel, yada yada. So they're like, yeah, you could take it to court and you probably win it, but it's gonna cost like $5,000. So we're like, yo, oh man, is this the best time to go forward with this type of thing? But we just ended up dissolving it, right? But then I came out with Peril, man. And funny enough, Peril was something that I was pitching to my cousin. Like he was starting out in Toronto on the East Coast. He was starting this whole thing with his homie. It was called the T-shirt guys, but they were trying to think of a name, like what should we go with, and they were thinking of this, this risk mentality. And
Mm.
I had mentioned to him, I'm like, yo, there's this alternative word for risk, is peril. I'm like, maybe you should go with that name. He's like, no, no, no. He's like, that's kind of whack. I'm not gonna go for it. But I was at a chip on my shoulder, right? I'm like, yo, I'm gonna use that one day. But yeah,
And
that's how
here
I
we are.
kind
You got it.
of yeah. Now
You
we
know,
got it
you
on the
know,
hat.
yeah, yeah, straight up. But I mean, when you talk about, Crux ending and all that, like the fact that you not only started this at a young age too, right? Like I think you guys were just out of high school at that time.
Yeah, we were just out of high school. I think we were like 20, 19, 20 or something like that.
Yeah, pretty young, right? So imagine, like, most people are trying to get a $15 an hour job at that age, and you're starting your own clothing company, right? So that's like something to be proud of at a young age and show the hustle. But then also at the same time, like, timing is everything. Like you said, you met a lot of interesting people along the way, people that, put you onto the game in certain respects and showed you the ropes in certain areas. And then we just happened to link at the same time because Gary,
Yeah.
who went as Gino at the time, introduced us and was like, "Yo, man," because we were opening up for Swollen members, and he's like, "Yo, I got these friends at school, and they've got this clothing company. We should get them to make up some shirt." And actually, I'm wearing that shirt right now.
Hey.
Crux Clothing,
Oh,
Crux
that is
City,
so money, bro.
right?
That
It
is
just
so
still fits me
money.
10 years later. I don't know how. but but we had this shirt printed. You guys brought the rest of your merch. We set up at the motel, I think it was called, in Vancouver. Was the name of the nightclub at the time. It was previously Wild Coyote.
Wild
um
Coyote.
yeah, and then it switched over to the motel when we did the show there. But I mean, that was amazing because you guys had the front and center booth, the merch booth, that it was just kind of sitting there. And then when the organizer was like, who wants this one? We're just like, yes, please. And then like, all right, it's all
Yeah.
yours, right? So I mean, even though the company ended, like, you still had not only created a company at that age, but then you were able to be a part of a concert, which is probably one of the biggest rap groups to come out of BC for sure, other than the
Yeah.
Rascals, I would think, right? Like, Swollen members are pretty damn big. Um, so that was amazing, right? To be a part of all of that. And then, like you say, like, this kind of leads into the next step of, like, you having these influences around you with music, with art, and that sort of coincides with then kind of getting into what D Meth was doing, right? Because Desi Method was this music label kind of, I like to call it a collective more than anything. Like, it's just this collective of artistic minds that come together and work on anything and everything, and are trying to constantly pursue, whether it's physical art, paintings, music, clothing, whatever it is, right? Like, we're always trying to move forward. And that was kind of like this time where we were all kind of coming together and starting to create together. um was there at that time, I know you weren't really emceeing or writing or anything like that, as far as I was concerned, because you were more of the design brain behind a lot of things, and you were also starting to dabble in production a little bit. Was there anything that led you to that road? Was it just being surrounded by all these people, or were you kind of going that way anyway?
It's funny because I never actually ever revealed that side of myself, but I've always been writing. You know what I mean? Like, I have my boy Sonny back in the day. Like, I've known Sonny since like we were little kids, right? And me and him, he was a year older than me, but he was a really creative dude. I should have mentioned him before actually, because he really got me thinking about design and art and that sort of thing too. Because he was always fucking creating, bro. Like, this
Mm,
guy was always creating. You know what I mean? Like, and I was his little homie. You know what I mean? And I'm going along with him. Like, okay, I'll hold your camera. Like, like, I'll get this done. I'll get that done. And I'll act with you in the cameras because nobody else is acting with this dude, right? And we're making like mixtapes and dropping them on LimeWire and stuff and Kazam, and nobody knows we're doing this shit. We're just doing this in our bedroom because our sisters are best friends, and my sister used to bring me to his house, and I would play with them, right? So what are we
yeah.
doing? We're downloading fucking beats and rapping on them, right? So I mean, I was always doing it. You know what I mean? So I think for a really long time, I just didn't do anything with it. And then having all these people suddenly around me that did it, it was like, oh shit, like, okay, like, I don't have to be alone in this. Like, that vulnerability doesn't feel as bad anymore, right?
Mhm.
So it was easier to just kind of come up and just spit a rap, you know, just drop something on a beat. Like, now all of a sudden I have homies that freestyle, so we're freestyling in a whip on Friday night. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. So do you remember, like, was it with your homeboy Sunny? Like, do you remember the first time you dropped a rhyme? Like, that was one of your own rhymes?
Yeah, bro, it was the dumbest thing, man. It was so stupid. Like, so you remember? So you remember that song? Some Asian guy. I don't even know. Maybe he was Vietnamese. It was like got rice, bitch, got rice, got. Remember that?
I don't
It
know.
was like a flip of Welcome to Atlanta or something.
Oh, really?
Do you remember this?
I don't remember it at all, man.
So it was this dumb song that came out, when the internet first started getting popping off with like voice notes and all this stuff, and it was caught right. We basically flipped it. We're like, yo, if this Asian guy can do it, we can do it. Like, let's just flip it to some brown shit. So we made it got done, right? And it was just some dumb shit, and then we ended up uploading it to LimeWire, and some people seeded it. But that was kind of the first venture. And then what happened was we started making like little movies, and at that time Get Rich or Die Trying had just come out, right?
Damn.
So we were super inspired. We're like, 50 Cent is just the shit. Like, this guy's lyrical, like he's such a hard rapper, like he's got the best beats. So we're like, okay, let's take some of his instrumentals and we'll start writing some stuff to it. So we made this movie. It was called shit. I can't even remember what it's called. It was like Boys in the Band or something like that, something stupid. But so we ended up writing a soundtrack to that album. You know what I mean, or that movie. And we made it like 5 tracks or something like that, and they were just like flips of 50 Cent beats.
Nice. That's awesome, man. I mean,
So
that's kind of where it's always interesting to hear, where somebody started from, because then it gives you so much more appreciation of where they are now, like, or, years later or even a year later. And going back to, you had mentioned this earlier, and I'll answer the question now, but when I first rhymed, it wasn't even a verbal rhyme. I was in we had this thing called 90 minutes. I went to William Beagle Jr. Secondary. Shout out anyone from Beagle. Um, and instead of detention, like your classic detention, we had to sit in the cafeteria for 90 minutes. It was called 90 minutes. You had to do homework or just be busy in some way, shape, or form. Um, so I got caught skipping school once, and then I was there and I was writing this kind of poem, which, I mean, rhymes are poems anyway, but it's kind of this poem kind of rhyme. And I was writing about getting caught and being in 90 minutes and how my mom's going to be pissed off and she's going to whoop my ass and all this sort of stuff. And I had kind of detailed the story in terms of like what I was doing, who I got busted by. And the woman who busted me and was supervising me at that time during that 90 minutes happened to be standing over my shoulder as I was writing it, and she was reading it, but she was reading it in her head, and I didn't know she was behind me. And all of a sudden, she was just like, "Hey, that's really good. Can I submit that to the yearbook club?" And I was like, "Oh shit." I was like, "You were rereading that?" I'm like, "I didn't intend you to read that, right?" And I felt kind of embarrassed because I was just like, it was one of those things. Like, I think you mentioned earlier in terms of like vulnerability. Like, I just felt vulnerable. I was like, "Oh my god, somebody's reading my internal thoughts." Like, I wasn't
yeah,
meant to be like shared with anyone. It was just supposed to be for me. Long story short, she submits it to the yearbook club. Everyone really liked it, and they were like, "Yo, we're gonna put this in here. Can we like reenact it and take a picture of you sitting in the cafeteria like you're writing it and all this shit?" And it was a trip, man, because I
that's
never
so
told anyone. You know what I mean? And when the yearbook came out, it was like everyone was just like, "Yo, man, what's this? Like, did you rap? Are you rhyming here? Like, what is all this shit?" And I felt embarrassed more than anything, right? I don't know why, because like I think it's one thing to read somebody's words, and it's another thing to hear them actually convey the message. Um, and
Mhm.
for me, like I say, going back to how I used to kind of remember songs and cadences and flows and stuff like that, I felt like it never did justice unless you heard me spit it. Like, you can read my rhymes as much as you want, but I was like, "Yo, let me spit this for you real quick." So that's kind of what I would start doing. That's kind of how it started, where people were like, "Can you recite this for me?" And I was just like, "Yeah, okay, cool. I can recite this." And I always have like most people always have like a song in their head, I would think, right? You get out of your car, whatever the last song was playing, it's in your head. Take your
You have
headphones
that.
out, whatever the last song, the beats in your head. So for me, it was always like whatever I was listening to at that time. At that time, I think All Eyes on Me was just popping. It was just out, and so whatever, I forget what beat it was, but something off that album was in my mind as I was writing that. And that's what it was for me. It started from that to a bunch of my homies in school that actually used to spit that were like, "Yo, man, can you rap?" And I was like, "No." It's just like, I can write. I'm a really good writer because I was a good writer. I am a good writer, I should say. Like I've been practicing writing for a long time. And then I think for me, like the first time I actually spit a rhyme was probably like grade it was grade 9 actually, man. It was at a house party at Bubba Lataine's house. Shout out Bubba. And he had this legendary house party on Christmas break, and me and two other homies were sitting down in front of the speakers at the party, and we were just
Yeah.
listening to the beat and listening to the music or whatever, and we just started rhyming. It was me, Roy Nolasco, shout out Roy Nolasco, and Ken Garces, shout out Ken Garces, both Filipino guys. And we just sit there and we just fucking started spitting, dude. We started like freestyling, and I'm sure it was real whack, but it was like the fact that you can connect words was cool enough. You know what I mean? And it was just like, oh shit, like
That's
dude said a
vibing.
sentence. You know what I mean? Like it was funny, man. But that's kind of where it started for me too. Was just like messing around with friends. It's kind of like, yo, let's just try this shit out. Like we listen to it, we can recite it. Why can't we create it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's dope, man. And I think that's one of the most important things is like for us to even do this, like, or anybody else who does something creative is just, you at the most, man, if nothing else happens, you're inspiring somebody, right? That's the way I see it, yo.
Straight up. And that's actually a really good segue into kind of my next question, which was like, now you are creating music. So now you can create that narrative. So like I think we kind of touched on this earlier, was when we were growing up in Surrey, especially, it's a very, at that time anyway, I haven't been in Surrey for a little while now, but at that time when we were growing up in the 90s and stuff, is very
Mhm.
male centric, dominated, macho, chauvinism, all that kind of bullshit. And so if you were like, yo, I can draw or I can paint or I can rap or I can play guitar, everyone would be like, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? Like, why are you trying to tell me you think you're better than me or whatever it is? Like, you're fruity. Like, get out of you know what I'm saying? Like, you're weird. And so that was really hard for me to actually really take music seriously, because I was like, don't nobody give a shit. You know what I mean? Everyone's just calling me out. So I think for both of us, we both shared that kind of earlier, that it was from a point of like vulnerability where it was just like, I don't feel really comfortable getting this out, to a point where we're at now where it's just like, we have to get it out. Like we believe in what we're doing now. So I think part of my question is that what you hope to kind of gain, for others to gain from your music, is to kind of this inspiration to be like, you know what, man, doesn't matter who you are, just do it, right? Like I'm doing it, and maybe if other brown kids see us doing it, they'll be like, oh shit, they look like us, they sound like us, that guy's from my neighborhood, that guy went to my school, maybe I can do that too now.
100%, bro. I think that's what it's worth, man. Like, man, like, one of the biggest things was, man, like, we're talking about inspiration. Like, how did I get into it? I got
Mm,
into it, bro, by looking at, those who became for me, right? My dad guys, bro. Like, we come from a small town. Like, I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but Clearwater, right? So in this town, bro, like, I mean, there's nothing around it, dude. Like, to come here is 6 hours away in Vancouver, right? And these guys would, get together as a whole crew. They're making videos. They're, singing over songs and recording themselves and shit like that. And I've seen them getting mad creative, right? And I'm inspired by this. So I'm like, if I'm fucking leaving my legacy through, my art, whether it be painting, whether it be, making fashion, like t-shirts and clothing, or rapping on a track, dude, I'm leaving my legacy for my next of kin, whoever it be, right? My nieces, my nephews, my cousins, my kids, or whatever it be, right? So I think that's where my worth is in it.
do you have any, like, now that you're creating music, and I should actually shout this out now, that you're doing this new thing, which I believe is called Wildin' Out Wednesdays, where you're dropping a new segment, a new installment every single Wednesday. And your last one, or your first one, I should say, was started last Wednesday, which would make tomorrow your second debut. Your sorry, not your second
Yeah.
debut, but your second installment. Is this something you're trying to do in terms of like the inspiration of just showing people, similar to what I'm doing with Freestyle Friday, like just this inspiration of like, you know what, just do it. Like don't think about it too much. Write it, record it, produce it, put it out, and just get the message out.
Bro, exactly that, man. Like, man, have sometimes it's like you have all these creative ideas, man, and it's like Nas said, man, ain't no new idea new under the sun, right? Like there's nothing new under the sun. So, we can have so many ideas. If we don't do it, the ether is gonna fucking send it out to somebody else. They're gonna do it, right? So I mean, as much as I love to see people doing it, I'd like to be doing it myself too, right? So I love that idea of just being able to drop things, man. Like, don't think about it too much, right? I mean, you're always gonna be chasing perfection, bro. And seeing you do freestyle Fridays, bro, been a huge inspiration to me. And I would like to, follow with a similar energy. I don't know if I'm going to be consistent for 52 weeks straight, but I'm a damn sure try, right? And bro, like you said it, we had a private conversation the other day. I kind of wanted to just touch on, this is experience points, bro. Like we're going to grow through doing it every day. Your cadence is going to get better. Your flow is going to get better. The way you write's going to get better. The way you're picking and choosing metaphors or the way you're arranging your lines, everything's just going to get that much more tighter. EXP points, bro. That's all I'm after.
Yeah, straight up, man. No, and it shows, man. Like I think I've since you first started doing music to where you are now, you mentioned this earlier that you've always been writing, and it's evident when you say something, when you spit something. It always to me sounds really like spoken word, like really like hit you over the head with some deep shit. So it like I can tell you've always been writing. And then now as you've been progressing and putting out music, I can hear it like in your voice. You can hear the confidence, you can hear your style coming out more and more. And you can hear your writing improving to write for music, right? Because there's a difference between writing for music and just writing in general, right? Like most people um would be able to write an essay or a journal installment or whatever it is, but to write a track or write a hook or write like a cohesive message over 3 minutes or however long a song is, that's a whole different style. That's a whole different technique. That's a whole different skill that you have to build upon. And I can hear that with what you're doing as well. Are there
Appreciate.
certain things that you are trying to convey in your music that you want people to like draw from?
Yeah, man. Like I'm again. I'm gonna have to quote Nas again, but Nas said this interesting line one time. He's like, I don't make music that I want to hear when I'm in the club. He's like, I don't want to hear music when I'm in the club. He's like, I'll leave that to Drake. I'll leave that to so and so X guy, right? He's like, what I want to make music for is to convey my thoughts and my innermost messages, right? And I think that's kind of what I want to do is just I want to touch on little things that I came across in my life, like little street knowledges, like little scenarios. Like my first track that I dropped last week was just a letter to my homeboy.
Hmm.
Like I mean, it wasn't something that was written, directly to one person in mind. It was, supposed to be omnipresent, right? And it's just I've come across so many dudes that have taken a path, and I know they could have done anything in their lives, right? And these aren't dumb motherfuckers. These are smart motherfuckers that could do anything. And I just wanted to talk directly to the few that I know, right? And I just want to be able to take every moment that I have to at least make it somewhat impactful, somewhat from the heart type thing. But who knows, tomorrow I may be talking about some wild and ass shit.
Yeah.
But you just hope that I live my life by a certain set of values, and I just want to be able to instill my rhymes and instill my art with those same values.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear, man, because I think that kind of speaks to what, we've talked about in many different conversations before on the phone or in person that, there is this, and by the way, you can quote Nas whenever you want on this show or anywhere. And probably no better MC to quote than that man right there. Um and I think, like I'm saying, like I think we have such an interesting perspective coming from like, you get outside of Surrey and mention the word Surrey, and all you hear is the same bullshit from people, right? Like, nobody has the real understanding of what it is to live there, to grow up there, to be around the people that you were with, to face, especially from from a male perspective, having to kind of stand up for yourself, and fight or see fights or see your homies in fights or whatever it is all the time, and like fights that turn violent, and just having to carry this chip on your shoulder and kind of looking in the rear view all the time. Like it's kind of a it's a traumatizing, or was it traumatizing for me, like parts of my childhood growing up, that it was just like, fuck man, like I can't wait to get out of this, you know what I mean? And I think it's important now, like you're saying, to kind of put those experiences and put those thoughts onto paper, and then send them back to either the people that grew up in our generation or the young kids growing up that might hear that and be like, shit, I don't want to go down that path. Like I see that going on around me. I don't necessarily want to get involved with that. Homeboy spitting about this. Maybe I'll take a lesson from him, right? And maybe I'll change my ways and change who I'm hanging out with. Or maybe I'll reach out to this guy and be like, yo, I rap too. Can I jump on a track with you, right?
Yeah, man, 100%, bro. Like, yo, man, we have access to so many people. Like, I don't remember. I don't know if you remember the little drummer boy Rajan.
Yeah.
Like, he was mad in, bro. He used to be in sessions with us, man, when he was a little kid, and he was inspired by you, man. Like, he's sorry if I'm airing this out, talking about what Rajan's thinking, but no, like he's told me, like he was inspired by shit that we were doing, and look at him today, man. He's an amazing rapper, right? And I mean, I just that's all we can hope for, man, is if we can use our talents and maybe use our resources to be able to, help pave the way for somebody else, right? Like, bro, this is all give and take, man. Collaborate, you know, contribute and cultivate. Like, those are kind of like my, my three C's, collaborate, contribute, cultivate. Like, the more we work together, bro, the more effort we put in as a unit, the more we're gonna get out of this stuff, right? Like, even this podcast, for instance, Studio Steve. Like, I really appreciate this space, bro. Like, this is something that you're natural at doing. Like, you were made for this fucking sort of thing, right? Your
Appreciate it.
personality, you're very social, you're able to network, and you have a broadcast voice, man. It's crazy. But having this platform for me, it's like, bro, not that I'm lazy or anything, but for me to go out and start a podcast is not as easy as it is for you, right? So I mean, I'm leveraging off of you, and I'm getting content, and I'm able to tell my story that I can't do by myself through the space that you created for me, right? And bro, it's as easy as that. Like, we don't have to rap, we don't have to paint. You could just pick up a mic and start reporting on your group of friends, on your personal community, right? That's as easy as this art shit is.
That's straight up, and I appreciate that. Thank you for all those compliments. And that's like, that is partly why I started this, was to just facilitate conversations for friends, family members, acquaintances, and eventually, I'm going to start reaching out to professors and people who I want to really have discussions with about big world issues and things that people are concerned about, right? Because I'm essentially just trying to facilitate conversations that are of interest to, first and foremost, people within my social circle, our community, because I feel like, especially a lot of my attention and my focus on mental health really is something that I want to branch out into the Indo Canadian community, because I feel like we have a lot of that going on internally within ourselves, and we don't have the strength to be vulnerable enough to admit it and to ask for help and to reach out and to share stories. And that's fine. And I'm not saying it is for everyone, because it's really fucking hard to do that. And it takes a lot of courage, and you got to build up to get to that point. But like we talked about earlier, and I said, like there's a lot of traumatic stuff you go through as a young brown dude growing up in Surrey, especially in the early 90s, early 2000s. And a lot of that stuff we just bottle and we push down. And so this is part of why I'm doing this. This is part of why I change my kind of my tone on social media. I think everyone seems to have a certain calling in their life. And like you said, like media and like broadcasting, music, whatever it might be, interviewing, these things come to me naturally because I've always been interested in them. Just as you've always been interested in art and design from a young age, like I've always been interested, like I said at the top of the show, with oration in general, like people that can command a crowd, people that can command attention, and talk about things that are interesting and that affect people, right? And I think everything we've kind of talked about covers all those areas. So, in short, man, you're welcome. And thank you for coming on the show and being able to share your story and talk about all the people that were a part of contributing to you getting to the point you're at now. And I think it's only going to grow and it's only going to get bigger. And this is perfect because this goes right into, what you're doing now, right? So like we're following the dominoes from the beginning to now of Peril Vision. So I'll turn it over to you, man. Like what is Peril Vision? Like what do you want people to know about what Peril Vision is?
Bro, Peril Vision is like, I always had this like this thing like Peril, for instance. It stands for people embracing risk in life, right? That is it's kind of always been my mantra, right? That's why I don't like I'm not saying that I'm not treating the brand professionally, but I see it as a personal identity more than anything. So I mean, I'm the engine behind Peril Vision, and Peril Vision is just, the process behind becoming fearlessness, getting that fearlessness behind you. It's going to do those moves and getting the shit done that you need to get done in order to do what you really want to do. Like, I don't want to be working at an office. I don't want to be wearing a tie and not be wearing my Jordans and Nikes and shit like that. Like, I want to be who I am. I want to do the things that I want to do, and I want to do them on my terms, right? And in order to do that, I have to go out and build a business. So Peril Vision right now, bro, like, I'm not trying to over define what it is. I'm just going out there
Mhm.
and I'm trying to make the moves within the fields that I want to break through in. So right now, bro, I'm really focused on being involved in music, whether that be engineering, whether that be lending my hand in writing, or whether that be me physically rapping. I really want to get my hands dirty on video work. So
Mhm.
that whether that means I'm making self-reliant videos for myself, help directing other people's videos, helping to make adverts and that sort of thing, or even like photography and that sort of thing. So right now the vision is to get your hands dirty and keep working. Like I told you, my 3 C's right now are to collaborate, contribute, and cultivate. I think we spend a lot of time trying to define what it is that we're doing, trying to become this perfect version of what we think successful looks like. And I'm just trying to get comfortable enough to show the process of me coming into the things that I want to be doing in my life. So in a sense, creating my lifestyle brand, right? I
Let's
think
talk a little
that's
bit
kind
about.
of I can break.
Yeah, 100%. That really does, based on conversations we've had, that really does cover what you have talked about in the past and kind of what you've been talking about today in terms of what Peril is and what you want it to become. It's kind of a definition of everything you've gone through and what you want to see change, you know what I mean? Like where impacts you want to have and then who you're making those impacts with, right? Who you're collaborating with, who you're cultivating these relationships with. And I think that you guys are onto something new now, right? With Peril, like you're starting to do a little bit of branding and marketing for existing businesses in terms of making videos and advertisements, such as you just mentioned. Do you want to talk
Yeah.
about a couple of the projects that you've been working on?
Yeah, for sure, bro. Like me and Desi Method, pretty much SJ from Desi Method, we've been getting together, and we've literally, you know, we've been working together for 10 plus years now. Me and
Mhm.
Sandeep, and we've done so many different projects, bro. We launched, the original line apparel together. We did countless, musical things. I've done so much artwork and all sorts of like little projects with them, right? So we decided, yo, like we've been going out here doing all this shit. We haven't really organized, come together, and tried to do something business oriented where we can actually make our seed money off of, right?
Mhm.
So we decided, okay, let's reach out to some people. Let's get our experience points up, and let's start helping people get projects done and make some money in the process, right? um, there's a lot to do in there's a lot to do in that creative world. There's a lot of work to be done, and all you really need to know how to do is utilize your equipment, know what to do with the footage, and having had that experience, I think it's the most natural move we can do, right? There's so bro, like, not to downplay anything, because I think people can do great things making money off of music and that sort of thing and making a living wage off of it. But I just feel like it's important to learn how to diversify and, not have all your, eggs in one basket. Right. Realistically, like, I'm not saying like, I'm not going to make it big tomorrow being a rapper. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do here. Although I would love to be making music on the daily for the rest of my life, it's just something that's a part of my lifestyle, right? But really, bro, like, us coming together and actually organizing and creating a trajectory for the work we're completing has been so different because now we're treating this like a 9 to 5. Like, dude, I was working for a corporation not too long ago, and it's not it's not the best feeling working for a company that doesn't care about their staff, right? And in order to, and I'm not complaining, bro. Like, I think it's important. Like, you should want to work, and you should work. And if you have to work at a 9 to 5 doing something you don't like to do, put up with it, and put in that extra hard work on the side, and learn to make something else your self-reliant income, right? But you know, creating something on the side, man, where you can actually go out there and do credible work and make money off of it. If you can do it, it's super important. It's really hard, obviously. Like, right now we haven't been making consistent money like you would at a 9 to 5, but it definitely feels a lot better mentally, right? Because now you're not having those stresses that you were feeling at that job that you weren't doing too good mentally because things aren't going. Yeah, bro, like, I don't know if you've worked for a corporation where it's just like, I don't even know how to put the words out there, but restrictive.
No,
And
I know exactly what you're saying. That's exactly what I did for 6 years, man, and like I know
yeah,
exactly what that feeling.
it's hard
And
to get
this
the
kind of
words out.
goes to your it kind of goes to your point about talking about success, in that
Yeah,
sometimes success is, success, I think, is it's an overused term, because I think most people, the connotation with success is monetary, and most people think that in order to be successful, you have to have some sort of financial advantage over the next person. And I think over time, people have started to redefine what success means to them. And it sounds like to me, based on everything you're doing and the things you're trying to create, and the people you're creating it with, sounds like you're on the road to, or are already feeling some forms of success because you're doing the things you want to do, rather than being in the office for people, working for people who don't give a shit about you.
exactly. 100%, brother. You put it better than I could. But that's exactly the thing, dude. Like, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in that comfort, right? And growth happen. I know you've seen that meme, bro. The growth is the circle, and it says comfort zone, and then growth happens outside the comfort zone. Like, that's so true, bro. Like, when you start pushing yourself, and it's inevitable, you're gonna grow. There's only one way to go, is up at that point, right?
So when we were talking about Peril, and we're talking about all the different things, you have your fingers in a lot of pies with Peril. And when you say with music, music seems to be, and especially from the onset of this conversation, we talked a lot about how music was directly influenced to you by family. So that's something that kind of sits deep in your heart, and that sounds like something you'll always want to create, whether or not it results in financial success or not. You're always going to create music, and I feel the exact same way. Like, I'll create music fucking forever, man. Like, even if I don't make a penny off of it, I'll always create it, because that makes me feel amazing. You know what I mean? And like, just by doing this Freestyle Friday, this next Freestyle Friday coming up this Friday is going to be 27 weeks. And the beat is actually from this homeboy in Italy. So,
Oh,
I'm getting just love from people all around the world. And like, for me, I'll just continue doing that, man. Like that, there's nothing that's going to stop me from creating that. But with the other things you're doing with Peril, is there an area, like, is it clothing centric the way Crux is going to be? You know what I mean? Like, is that going to be the main focus, and then the rest of the stuff you're doing on the side will kind of be additional things that Peril is doing as well?
yeah. The thing with Peril is, like, it's somebody is so funny, bro. Somebody actually approached me and they're like, they messaged me and they're like, "Yo, bro, like I'm confused. Like, what do you do? Like, you know, you do this, you did this, you do this, you do that, you all this stuff. But what do you actually do?" Right? And I was like, "Oh, okay, you're confused." I'm like, "That's great. Now it gives us something to talk about." Because I think that's the greatest thing, right? Like I'm out here, I'm trying to build a brand that's so confusing that it makes somebody curious enough to come have a conversation with me. But that's what I think sets my vision off with Peril. It's not, I'm not trying to build a traditional business, bro. I'm trying to build unique relationships with a small amount of people that I can build with, right? And there's a lot to go around, man. Like I'm not too focused on, oh, I'm gonna make a million fucking dollars tomorrow, and I'm gonna be the king of the world. I'm gonna be, you know, playing tennis with Jeff Bezos or some shit. Like that's not how I see it. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like if we make these small moves and we as a community build and grow and build these platforms and we work together. I know it's so cliche, like, you know, it's over optimistic, you know, looking at it like, oh, la-di-da-di, everybody's happy together, yada yada. No, I'm just saying I'm trying to build a business that's very relationship centric. So I want to be having conversations with my customers. If I'm selling something, if there's a service or, you know, currency being exchanged, it's being exchanged through some sort of bondable like relationship type thing. You know what I mean? And I know that still sounds a lot confusing, but the thing is, like, I'm working with my friends, bro. Like, I'm doing commercials and I'm doing you know, photo shoots, and I'm doing all these things for people that I know in the community or have been introduced to because they're like, yo, this guy's a good guy. Like, you know, I know this guy personally, I can vouch for him, you know, work with this guy. That's the type of business I want to do. I don't want to do, you know, widespread big ass business. That's not my goal with this, right? I just think that we've been looking at business in such a one-sided way. Like it's always been, okay, there's this professional code, let's follow it. You know, here are the rules to your industry. Now go and do what your industry requires, right? But I think like, you know, this new age of, you know, being able to go onto StreamYard and making a podcast, Studio Steve, you know, like it gives us a whole new ability to have, you know, micro conversations and have these you know, moments where we're able to really get into our personalities and understand, yo, Steve's this type of person, Karn's this type of person, you know, I fucks with this guy, so I might just buy a hat just so we can get, you know, these guys moving a little bit more in the direction they want to go to. We want to support people we like, right? We want them to get further. So that's all. If that makes sense, I hope I'm not rambling or anything, but yeah.
No, yeah, no, it makes sense, man. I think, you know, with what you're, if I gather correctly, with what you're trying to say, like, it feels like to me that, you know, you come from the understanding that the previous
Sorry, bro, I cut out.
um, models of business that you were accustomed to or knew were, you know what, I'm selling this for $5. I need $5 from you in order for me to put some money in my pocket. Whereas now you're trying to be like, yo, how can I make you $5 while making me $5 at the same time? You know what I mean? Like you're trying to collaborate, as you said, you're trying to cultivate relationships so that the people you're collaborating with, you can actually have a genuine connection with, and you guys are helping each other's businesses grow. And that sort of is if you know, with what you're doing, with the commercials and sort of building the branding for people, the photo shoots I think are that to me, when I've seen the photo shoots that you've come up with, seems like a really good way for small businesses to reach out to you and say, hey man, I need some sort of public image, or I need some sort of publicity in this social circle or in this social setting. Can you do this for me? So I think, like, unless I'm mistaken, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like it seems like that's what you're trying to do with outside of clothing and outside of music with the branding. You're trying to help people establish their businesses and trying to get them in the faces and the eyes of their customers and their demographics.
100%, brother. 100%. Just trying to do, the marketing behind the brands. Like, I actually enjoy being, behind the curtains. That's kind of like my thing, yo. Like, I love the conceptualization part of it. I love coming up with ideas. I love. It's weird, but I love being in the studio executing. You know what I mean? Editing and stuff like that. It's a great part of the process that not everybody gets to see. You know what I mean? Like, we often have times on the internet get to see the end product always, right? We never see the process, but I think that's one of the most important parts, is to emphasize on that and show that. And that's something that DJ's been great at too, is this something that I really learned off of him too, is just showing the process and the vulnerability, and taking it off from there, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think, from a sports perspective, like I love watching behind the scenes stuff. I love watching people get prepared for games. I like to see them, celebrate after a victory. I like to see them cry after a loss because I've been on both sides of the fence of that. So, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's great to show people, the process, because it humanizes what you're doing. Otherwise, if you just show them the glitz and the good stuff, and you're just being, a regular social media fucking socialite, right? That is just like, yo, look at all this great stuff that's happening to me. Look at all these great positions I'm in. But it's like, if it doesn't come with any bad stuff, with any doom and gloom, without any like misery, you know what I mean? Then it's not real, right? Everything, every process, every successful process to get from A to Z requires all of that shit, right? It requires all these ranges of emotion. So yes, it is. And shout out to DJ McKay for sure. DJ's always on his hustle 24/7, 365. The guy's got like 100 businesses. Um, and he's always working, man. He's always working. You got to love that guy's enthusiasm. You love his passion, his motivation, right? His dedication to himself. And I think that's really one thing that we talk about a lot personally on the phone about as well, is like, in order to get to these positions, to establish a business, to grow a business, to cultivate relationships, you really need to dig deep in yourself, you know what I mean? And unless you are really championing who you are best to become, you're never going to get those other intangibles in life, because unless you know who the hell you are, and unless you're like really comfortable with that, the rest of that shit is going to be out of reach. Before we close, man, because this has been amazing, but we're just gonna close here in the next few minutes, and I just want to turn it over to you. And if I were someone, like you mentioned earlier, the guy that came up to you and said, "What is Peril Vision, and where can I find you? Like, where can I find what you do?" And if you had to give me like an elevator, 30-second, real quick, like, this is what I do, this is how I can help you. Um, that's kind of what I want to end with. Like, what would you tell someone, where they can find you and what you do?
You can find me at peril.vision on Instagram. That's solely where we are. And the way you can communicate with me is through the DMs. If you if you have some creative work that you need help getting done, video, photography, recording music, website building, reach out to us. We'll figure out a mutual, something mutual that works, and we'll get the project done. This is about building creative relationships, and this is about venturing further and further into the creative world, and doing it together with the community that's around us right here, right now.
That's amazing, man. And I'll make sure that on the tags at the end of this video, once we're done, I'll add some tags to it, and I'll make sure I add your Instagram tag on there so people can reach out to you. As well, I believe you have perilvisiongroup@gmail.com if people wanted to send you messages and people wanted to reach out to you that way as well.
Yep.
But I know that there's a lot to come up in the future for what you're doing. I know musically you're doing your own thing, which I love, right? Like, you don't sound like anyone. Your style is completely you, and everything we've talked about throughout this conversation stems from that. Everything stems from family, it stems from an early age, it stems from what you feel like needs to be represented and presented in terms of like a design or an artistic standpoint. So it's really refreshing to have this conversation and to listen to you kind of take us through the dominoes of like this first one to where we are today, and where we're going to go from here. And I'm excited about it, man. I know that I've got a lot of new music projects coming up. And we've talked about it before. I'd love to get you on some hooks. I'd love to get you on some ad libs, some writing, and vice versa. Like we've been working on a lot of music. I came across something in my hard drive. Fuck, I can't remember the name of it, but it was a track you sent me a long time ago, man. And I was just like, what is this? And it's from like 2013. I was like, shit,
Yeah.
we gotta finish this, man. It was something really deep. I think we were both going through some like emotional,
Oh, traveling,
some sort
bro.
of traveling. Yeah,
Oh,
right.
damn, bro. Yo, if people heard traveling, dude, yo, man, that's a deep track that we both made, man.
Yo, that's it. That's the one. I got that shit on my hard drive, man. I'll send that shit to you, man. I'll send that to you, and we can reestablish it, man. We'll bring it back to life because I have the instrumental, like the MP3 instrumental, and I still have my vocals and your vocals over it. So we were trying this shit for a while, right? And I think now we're at a point where we can make it happen. So we'll make it materialize soon for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And again, bro, thank you for having Studio Steve, man. It's a great platform. And like I said, I can't tell my story on my own. So doing things like this, it helps me tell my story too, man. So it's huge for all of us, man. So appreciate that.
100%. Absolutely, man. Anytime, man. You got some more stuff coming out. As soon as you start getting new things generating with the business, please let me know. We'll bring you back on the show. We'll bring some of the clients on. We can do, multiple screens and get multiple people on. And again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day and coming onto the show and talking to me and talking to the people and letting them know who you are and what you do. And I know that this will translate into people reaching out because as far as artistic integrity is concerned, not a lot of people have artistic or creative brains, and you have like a multifaceted one. So I think this is going to turn into some great stuff with Peril Vision. Congratulations on starting this company and starting your second company before the age of 30. That's amazing. And I'm really, really looking forward to what you're going to do in the future. Shout out to the whole D Meth camp, DJ McKay, SJ, Think Vic, Jimmy Sierra, Mully, Zay, fucking everyone that's involved in the collective, like, that is just a part of it. And thank you everyone for tuning in. This is episode 6, Studio Steve. Many, many more to come in the future. And just like Karun, anyone has a message, anyone has something they want to promote, whether it's art, music, food, business, please let me know. Shout me out. You can hit me up in the comments and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much for everyone tuning in. Thank you, Karun, for showing up. I really appreciate it. Mad love to you, bro. And we'll catch up soon.
Man, you and everybody that's watching, thank you for having us.
100%. Peace out, man.